talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say to...
Good morning. Welcome to NUFC Matters for a rather early Thursday show with myself, Steve Wraith, Supermac and Gibbo, and plenty to talk about as always in the next hour about Newcastle United and maybe a few other things besides. Starting off with a rather sad bit of news, which has been covered brilliantly in the Chronicle as always by John. So I'll start with John. He just a message from Dave Smith's son reached me on social media last week just to say, if you can pass this on about my dad. Well, John was fully aware of it. It's a legendary name, another legendary name gone to the sky with regards to that first cup legendary team, John.
Yeah, Dave Smith was a very, very good friend of mine during those years. I had an awful lot to do with him. Quirky character, he had more bounce than a rubber ball. Full of life, organised the defence well, because Joe was never, as Malcolm knows, having followed the first cup side, Joe was never the tactician. That was left to the coaches, and so Dave Smith was the one, having been a left back himself at Burnley, etc. He organised the defence, which basically in the days when Newcastle won the first cup, really we were organised by a defence, although we had Big Win Davies and Pop Robson to score goals up front. It was mainly keeping the back door locked. That was that we were good at. And I just remember a lovely, lovely man. He always had a lot of style, Dave. He actually arranged that when he was going to pass away, he would do it the same day as the Queen. So he's always had a sense of timing and a sense of occasion as Dave, and he was up and skipping by then. And I always remember two things with Dave. One was we played in the first cup on New Year's Day at Real Zaragoza in Spain. Fancy playing a European game on New Year's Day. It was quite incredible. I mean, New Year's Eve. I always remember, because in those days I was a bit of a lively tiger, and I always remember I was out in a nightclub the night before. Remember, the press could do that, the players couldn't. And the nightclub, Malcolm, closed down at 11:45 and reopened again at 12:30. You all had to leave the building because at 12 midnight you weren't allowed to be in the nightclub. That was closed down for 12 midnight for the new year. So we all had to troop out the nightclub, 7 parts cut at 11:45, return to the hotel, get a glass in the hotel, and go back to the nightclub at 12:30 for the rest of the evening. Anyway, we played on New Year's Day. I think we lost 3-2, but we actually got through because of the away goals. But I always remember getting a phone call the next day in the hotel from a tip-off guy. I was up in the bedroom. And he said, you better get down to reception. It's getting a bit lively down there. There could be a story for you. So I hoofed it down to reception. And down in reception was Dave Smith and Jim Scott, who was our winger, of course, who scored our first goal in Europe that year and scored to get us through against Rangers to the final, etc., etc. Anyway, they were there, and there was two burly Spanish coppers with packed with the old pistols, of course, as they were out there. And it turns out that there was two guys that absconded from prison, two English guys, and they were called Dave Smith and Jim Scott. Can you believe that? But Smith and Scott is relatively common names, but so they were tipped off that Scott and Smith were staying in this hotel, so they'd come to arrest them and haul them back to jail. We eventually had to get the interpreter down from his room to explain, and they looked at the passports and accepted that they weren't the two guys that they were said. And I remember dear old Dave Smith saying to me, I was really bloody annoyed about that. I said, well, I'm not surprised, mate. He said, he said, he thought Scotty and I were English and were a couple of jocks because there was a couple of Englishmen that they'd come to arrest. And of course, big headline, banner headline in the Chronicle last night, United pair arrested by gun-toting coppers. So good story for Gibbo. Nobody was hurt. We were going to win the game. He was a lovely, lovely man, and he stayed with friends all his life. And I remember flying down in Laurie McMenemy's time later, when Laurie McMenemy, a very, very good mate of mine, born in Gateshead in Southampton and all that, was stupid enough to take the Sunderland job.
Did a great job.
He did a magnificent job as a Geordie for Sunderland. He did terrific. He took them to the verge of relegation, and it was completed at the end of that season. So that was okay. But I remember the Sunderland man was off, and I was asked to fly down with Sunderland to play. They were playing Plymouth, and I flew on the team aircraft down to for the match on the south coast. And the manager of Plymouth was Dave Smith, and I went and I'd warned him I'm coming down for the game, etc. And when I went into the press room at the start, there was a huge banner up on the wall saying, "Welcome, Gibbo, to God's other own country." And it was from Dave Smith, which I thought was a lovely touch. And I was pleased because you lose touch with everybody, Malcolm, as you would know. You lose touch over the years with everybody in football because you meet so many people and they go away, etc. But just 3 months ago, Dave Smith rang me here at my house here and just said, "Gibbo, just want to have a chat. We haven't seen each other for a long while. I'm back up living in the north now." He'd spent all his time on the south coast, Plymouth and Torquay. And he's just reminiscing and he said, "Hi, Gibbo, it's been a great life, hasn't it? Life's been good to us. The years on Newcastle were fabulous." And I said, "Aye, they certainly have, Dave. They certainly have." And that was the last time I spoke to him. But a fabulous guy, fond memories of him. Being arrested by Spanish coppers mainly, but there we are.
Yeah, I crossed just very slightly with Dave when I first joined Newcastle.
All right,
he left in 71, if I remember rightly. Did he go to Colchester as manager?
No, he went down the divisions. Off the top of my head, he won 4 promotions as manager.
Yes,
he certainly was at Plymouth, Torquay, and Mansfield.
right.
And won promotions with all of them. And he went up
Yes.
to Scotland very fleetingly to Dundee and managed Dundee. But
Oh,
yes,
right. Well,
he wanted to be a manager, yeah.
Yeah, well, I spent just a few sessions in pre-season training
Yes.
with Dave at work, but then he moved on to whichever
You
club
got
it
Berkey,
was.
didn't you?
Sorry?
You got Berkey then.
And then
keep
Berkey,
job.
yes, he was promoted from the reserve side to the first team.
Yeah.
And the reserves, I think, went in the care of Ken Oliver.
Yes,
who
that's
was
right.
junior
Absolutely.
coach.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, what we've got to remember, Steve, is that, and perhaps we don't want to remember, but Dave Smith, bless him, was an integral part of the last Newcastle United side to ever win anything. Because 1969 still stands as our last major win. And I'm relying very much on Amanda and Jamie and everybody and Eddie Howe to put that right very quickly in the next couple of seasons, this season and next. Let's win one of the cups at Wembley.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And
absolutely. But just on Dave Smith, I think he was when he did leave, he was a great loss to Joe Harvey.
Yeah,
I felt that Joe was sort of, he'd had an arm cut off.
Yes, yeah, you're right. You're right,
then,
Malcolm. He relied on him a lot.
Yes, yeah.
He relied on him a lot, but like a lot of number twos, he had this hankering to be a number one, and he was successful in terms of winning promotions, albeit down the divisions. Berkey, as we all know, Malcolm, after us, went on and become a heck of a number one at Spurs with
Spurs, and then he went on to Aberdeen.
Yeah, but our dealers and Ricky Beer,
yes,
what they won at Spurs.
Well,
big time.
the person who was actually over in South America arranging all of that and did the deal for Tottenham Hotspur was my old manager, Harry Haslam.
He did all the deals.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was a real wheeler and dealer, was Harry. But he was manager of Luton, and he got via Nardiles to go to Tottenham. Tottenham paid a fee, and Harry's cut of it was to get a third player. And he got a little Argentinian midfield player, and I'm trying to think of his name. It begins with S. And he went on and he played for Luton for a long time, and then became a manager after that.
Oh, I remember him. Was it something like Sabella or something?
That's it, Sabella. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Sabella. Well remembered, John.
He could play.
That was the fee for arranging the Tottenham deal.
Right. Well, all you Rangers are the same. You arranged for us to get Mirandina, if you remember.
That's right. Yes.
From South America, the Brazilian, and I think you did it on two things. One, you knew he was fast like you, but two, you knew he wouldn't score as many goals as you did, so your record was still safe. Right?
Yeah.
With hindsight, that's the way I look at it.
I make no apologies for bringing this up as the next item. John Tudor, the legendary striking partner of Supermac, played for Newcastle 164 times between 1971 and 1976. He's in need of full-time care due to a football-related condition which his family simply cannot afford. I have posted the link in the chat today, and I've pinned it at the top of the chat. So it's a GoFundMe page. If you've got a few quid that you can spare to help John's family, please just click that link today. $3,790 has already been raised, which is fantastic. But I do know that they need a lot more than that. So I'm going to do my bit on social media over the course of today, spreading the word on the different Newcastle groups. But I would ask anybody watching live, or those of you who are watching on catch up later on today, I know you're big fans of the show. We don't ask you for anything. We do these shows free of charge. If you can spare £1 or a little bit more to the cause, every pound counts at this moment in time for John. But memories of John, Malcolm, from your perspective first, please.
Well, what I was going to say was he's been suffering from Alzheimer's for quite a number of years, and it was progressively getting worse. So obviously it's taken a very strong hold over him. Bless him. Absolutely lovely lad, and football daft. He could talk football all day long, he just loved being a part of the side at Newcastle. And I thoroughly enjoyed playing with him. I came at 21. John, I think, was about 25, 26, a bit more experienced than me. And so he talked with me all the while, and I picked up a huge amount from him, which I'm forever grateful for. I don't think that he was ever actually rated a quality player, but there were times when he was. And I shall always remember in my debut against home debut against Liverpool, the third goal I scored, it was in the second half, and it was thanks to Terry Hibbett firstly, and then John Tudor. And John did an absolute beautiful little bit of magic. Terry Hibbett had run some 40, 50 yards, maybe more, through the inside left channel from sort of pretty much the edge of our penalty area, and he was probably about 35 yards from the dead ball line, and he passed diagonally to John Tudor, and John just did a little turn, and the ball came down his right-hand side, and by turning he was facing the Liverpool goal, and one of the centre halves, I think it was Larry Lloyd. He was stretching a long leg, and John, as the ball arrived, what he did was he lifted the ball on the side of his foot and just flipped it over the leg of Larry Lloyd, and it dropped right in my path perfectly, and I just hit it. First time into the corner, thank you very much. But that touch by John, it was so beautifully delicate and absolutely perfect, right in my stride. And he was always delighted when I scored a goal, because he really saw us as a partnership. So if I scored, he had scored. If he scored, I had scored, and that's how we went about it. And I, when I first arrived, John, he said to me, tell me about your philosophy on the game. How do you think about the game? So I told him about what had happened at Luton with regards to the manager and Alex Stock, where he had given me a target each season that I was there, 2 seasons. He gave me a target of 30 goals for each season. The first season I got 29, so I was a failure in his eyes. The second season I got 32. And so I remember going across to him after that last game of mine. We played Cardiff and beaten them 3-0. I scored all 3, but I knew I was leaving. This was going to be my last game with Luton, and so I went to Alex Stock and I said, "Well, here's to you, boss." I said, "Sadly, we didn't get promotion this year, which we had done the year previously." I said, but I said, you gave me a target of 30 goals. I said, and also you reminded me that I was 1 short last season and that I owed you 1. I said, well, my first tonight was the 30th goal for me of the season. My next was the one I owed you from last season. I said, and then the third one, I said, well, you can have that for luck. He said, you're going to be needing some bloody luck where you're going, mate. And of course, he had already got the Newcastle deal lined up, which happened 2 days later. But I related that to John, how I said, I am going to stick with what Alex Stock demanded of me, 30 goals a season. And John, he just listened and he went, interesting. He said, well, I'll get 15. That's 45 goals. That means we won't get relegated.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And that's how he worked it out, just like that. We won't get relegated ever. If you get 30, I'll get 15. So we look to score 45 goals a season between us.
That's not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all, is it?
Under the old regime, Malcolm, the whole team didn't score 45 goals in the season, I think. But there we are. I mean, happy memories, just very quickly on John, because he meant an awful lot to me as well around the Malcolm era. I remember when his book came out, King for a Day, a book he wrote with Angie, and I did the forward to it. He asked if I would do the forward, and I wrote the forward to it. And in 1974, which was when I was covering all the World Cups and the Olympic Games for the Cron, I think 74 was one of the few times, or perhaps the only time, when England didn't qualify for the finals. And they were in Germany, and I wondered whether I would be going as a consequence. Oh, no, it happened later when I went with Jack John, the Republic of Ireland. I went over there with him. They said, right, go, Scotland's there, go over. And I went over and I took John Tudor with us. And this was at the height of him playing for Newcastle. It was 74, Malcolm, which was our cup final year. And
Yes.
we went over there. He was always a deep thinker about football, as Malcolm said. And he was not only good company, but it was nice to hear his thoughts on the World Cup and what was happening. And happy memories. I've kept in touch. And yes, he is rapidly declined of recent times. It is awfully sad because he doesn't really remember any of the things or any of us or whatever. And it's a very, very sad thing. He continued to live in America after he finished out there where he was coaching for a while. I always thought he would make a manager, and he always wanted to be a manager.
Oh, desperately, didn't he?
He went out to Belgium at the end of his playing career.
Yes.
And once you go out there to play, in this, and you're not in the big time, you're not with one of the Champions League clubs, you're forgotten about. And by the time he come back here, they'd moved, and he had no managerial experience. They were now looking at the more recent managers to retire and taking them immediately from big clubs. And he never got the chance here. And he eventually ended up coaching at more at local level in the States and has lived there ever since. But I wish his wife Anne all the very best. She needs all the help she
She's
can.
a lovely lady, isn't she, John?
Yeah, and a loyal
lady,
servant and supporter of John all these years. So I wish him all the best in any help from any Newcastle fans. And we both know, Malcolm and I, when we go around talking of that era, how many fans have a fondness for John Tudor. Any help will be wonderfully received because of all the clubs he played for, the club he held dearest to his heart was always Newcastle.
Always Newcastle, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Well, please, the link is in the chat. So if you can donate, no matter how much you can donate, please donate because it is a very worthwhile cause. Plenty of people asking if there's going to be any players who've been injured fit this weekend, John. So I will address it. I've just been sent a rather interesting photo from somebody who's up at the training ground this morning, which shows ASM, Wilson and Bruno all taking part in training this morning, John. So that's got to be good news.
Got to be huge, hugely good news. And it's one of the things, I guess, that's been the only plus of not playing at West Ham. It's give injured players an extra fortnight, if you like, since the last game to get themselves fit. I would probably think this game's come a bit early for Callum Wilson. Although obviously we'd dearly like to play in it. It's Bournemouth. I mean, apart from wanting to play in any case, because he doesn't play enough, bless him, it's Bournemouth. But I mean, if we could get Bruno back, if we could get Maxi back, I think it would make a huge difference. Bruno is the engine room in there, and however well or indifferent Willock and Longstaff have been in there, Bruno makes a heck of a difference. You're talking about a step up in class there. And Maxi, you're just hoping that Maxi does something that Almiron and Fraser and Murphy are incapable of doing. In as much as the last two games that he played for us, he was absolutely unplayable against Man City. And then he scored the wonder goal from an indifferent performance at Wolves. So we could do with both of them back, and it would be nice to see that they are back. I don't think the manager will give too much away because that's not his style. He'll come out tomorrow at his press conference and say there'll be a late fitness call and a fitness test on both of them, because why let Bournemouth know what they can, and therefore they can make tactical arrangements for them playing or not playing. But it would be a massive boost for us if Bruno and Maxi can be back. If Wilson was as well, good gracious, that's a jackpot. But I don't know that he'll be rushed back because he really is a guy that's got to be kept in cotton wool. But we'll wait and see. But out of three, we must get one and hopefully two back for this game.
Yeah, let's hope so. Big shout out, as always, to our sponsors, skipsandbins.com, who've been with us a very long time now. Big thank you to Scott and the guys. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals, independent funeral directors, 304 Old Durham Road, Gateshead. telephone 0191 478 2730, or find them at the website www.darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD Hemp and Cannabinoid Specialists, www.thegohd.com. And thanks to 3 Properties, who specialise in sourcing investment properties for their clients who are looking to invest in the Northeast. They offer a full in-house service from sourcing the deals to managing the properties for you. And they've done over 100 plus deals in the past 12 months for clients all over the UK. Give the guys a follow on Instagram, matty.patter_Northeast Property, or phil.reed_Northeast Property, or email phil@3property.co.uk should you be interested in getting a good property deal. Thanks also to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickies.co.uk. And thanks to Media Arts with all their video technology. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables, and the guys who run our website, nufcmatters.com. If you want to subscribe, hit the NUFC Matters logo in the right-hand corner and you can subscribe for free. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to share to your social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Usually goes up 24 hours after the show has finished online. And don't forget, you can join the channel. Just click join underneath today's video, or you can go to the website and get an NUFC Matters cult package, which is a scarf, a pen, a cup, and a membership card and entry into the monthly draw. NUFCmatters.com, click membership, or put your smartphone over the QR code. It will take you straight there. We also give away a free car sticker to anybody who subscribes. Just email john@nufcmatters.com to claim your free car sticker today. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is also where you can help make a difference. Click to that website and you can make a virtual donation 365 days of the year. Pre-match entertainment will be at the Dog and Parrot with me and Supermac at 12:30 this coming Saturday before the Bournemouth game. Don't forget, me and Malcolm will be back after the game as well, around about the 6:30, 6:45 mark. And Pumphrey's, we'll see John Anderson alongside our very own Gibbo down at Pumphrey's, 44 The Cloth Market in Newcastle. Great little boozer, that. This is something a little bit new, so please go along and give John, the two Johns, support from 12:30 if you're down that end of town. And I have been asked to give this a shout out. Friday the 11th of November, which is coming up very, very soon. The Terrace Club, an evening with Supermac. It's a pie and pea supper. Individual tickets are a tenner. Table of 6 is £50. And you can get your tickets from the club in Seaton Delaval, 0191 237 0133. And don't forget, we are having a little takeover anniversary night party coming up on the 7th of October, which is a Friday night. It's £2 a ticket. You can buy them from the website, or you can buy them on the door on the night. Free to anybody who is a member of NUFC Matters, of course. They will have a raffle, etc. on the night, but all proceeds from that event are going to the food bank. So nice opportunity for us all to get together at the Irish Centre, looking over St James's Park and celebrating a year in charge for me, Dad, Amanda, and the rest. And I did promise that I would promote this a little bit as well. Pause and Prosecco for the dog and cat shelter in Newcastle. Please go to the website, thedogandcatshelter.com, #events if you want tickets for that. And the food bank t-shirt this week is a signed John Beresford t-shirt. You can find that on my Twitter @Steve Wraith. Place a bid underneath. The winner will be announced tomorrow, and I think that's at £45 at the minute. So £45 going to the food bank, which is fantastic. And I mentioned the Three Amigos. We are back tomorrow, 5 o'clock tomorrow night. So set your reminders for that. Steve Hastie's never looked as big. I've never had as much hair. And Mitch looks like he's in a very compromising position, and that's no different than any other weekend for Mitch. So always well worth a look. Now, somebody in the chat did mention something which I am going to ask the lads about. Some people are going, no, don't. It'll take over the whole show. Mike Stewart said, did the lads see the strange idea floated by the new American Chelsea boss? A game between North versus South, all-stars. Just want to know what your thoughts are on that. This is bonkers. I really do think, and I didn't really get a chance to say much last night on it. It's absolutely crazy, but it is something that we have predicted for the last 2 years on this show, that Americanization of the game would come with American owners, and they're gonna give it a go. And this is the north side, lads. Ederson in goal, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Diaz, Van Dijk and Cancelo make up the back four. Midfield of De Bruyne, Rodri, Fernandes, Salah, Ronaldo playing off Haaland. Look familiar, lads. Is this this is crazy. Malcolm, I mean, I don't know where to start with it, but I'm sure you've got the same mindset as me on this one.
Well, yeah, I can't even see how they can consider putting something like that on. For what purpose? What's it for? We've got 2 cup competitions. We've got a league. We've got European Cup competitions. What do we need these extra fixtures for? The fixture list is overloaded, and I just don't see where they're coming from whatsoever on this. And plus the fact, the first thing you've got to look at is, are the players going to be covered for insurance? Now, clubs, they insure their players, but they insure them for competitions. This isn't a competition. This won't be included in the insurance, which is very expensive. And I think it's bonkers and balmy. I really do.
I mean, it's typical of the sort of showbiz American idea. I mean, the Americans have really done their clubs proud over here. I mean, the Glaziers have risen Manchester United to the top of Mount Everest, haven't they? And the Americans at Liverpool, everything that's happened there is despite them. And I would think this guy who was coming to Chelsea ought to concentrate more on Chelsea, because if our owners were under a national spotlight when they took over Newcastle, they have done an awful lot, as we come up to the first anniversary, an awful lot of quality things, like appointing a good manager, a good behind-the-scenes Ashworth and Eales, great signings, the 2 Januaries, etc., etc. This guy down at Chelsea, sacking the bloke that won the European Champions League for them and the World Club thing for them, etc., etc. And what else he's done down at Chelsea, and the crazy ideas that he's come out with, and not knowing his history. I forget what it was all about, but I remember Joe Cole coming up and saying, excuse me, would you like to look in the history books before you make statements on previous players at Chelsea? Because it might happen it might help if you know what happened. I mean, he's arrived and he's been as subtle as an air raid, isn't he? I mean, he's just a scattergun that's all over the shop. And this is his latest one. Why doesn't he batten down the hatches, take a leaf out of Abramovich's book, which is shut the hell up, and say out, and just get on with trying to run the club? Because he's done Chelsea a lot of favours so far, hasn't he? I mean,
sure.
Raheem Sterling, who left to get more games and win things. Well, he might get more games at Chelsea than at Man City, but he sure ain't going to win things if they're going to continue in the way they're continuing under this owner. And while I've had so much time for Potter and what he's done, he's off taking on something, not by going to a club of Chelsea standing, but going to a club of Chelsea standing that has been run in the apparent way it's going to be run, in the public domain, with outrageous statements by the chairman that's the chairman now. Yeah, crazy, bonkers idea. Long may Chelsea have loads of bonkers ideas, because it clears the path a bit for us to come steaming through the middle and swat them to one side.
Sure. What's crossed my mind as you were speaking, John, is that you can sort of cut the country in half. You've got 10 northern clubs and 10 southern clubs. Each club nominates a player. do it that way, maybe that might
Well,
make
I mean,
a bit of
you look
sense.
at
It
the-
includes everybody then.
You look at the north side that was just put up there. Not that I'm bothered in going
Yeah,
into
it
this
was-
too much because it's crazy, but it's Man City, Man United, and Liverpool.
Yes.
You know, well, does anybody else exist? And perhaps that's why they didn't want our takeover to happen, of course, because the closed shop is going to get scattered a little bit in years to come by Newcastle
Yeah.
United's presence. But yeah, let the owner of Chelsea get on with it. Let him come up with loads of ideas. Let him spread hand grenades all over the shop, and we'll just tootle through the debris in the middle, tiptoe through the whole lot, and see who comes out the other end.
And who knows? Just maybe he might come up with a good one.
Yeah, well, a lot of averages.
Out of 10 shots, he's got to have one somewhere along the
On
line.
target. Yeah, you would think so.
I'm still waiting for it, mind.
Midlands teams completely missed out, by the way. North versus South. I did suggest on the show last night. They said, "What about the Midlands teams?" I said, "Well, that's where we can play it."
Yeah. Oh well, yeah. We can have a Midlands team, and we can have the lack of success of Aston Villa and the lack of success of West Brom, and we can put Steve Bruce as manager of it, and yeah, I can see a lot of fun there.
Yeah, but what is the point of it?
But there isn't a point. It's just about making money.
Is there? No,
it's a making money exercise. Once again, that's all it's about.
Yeah,
absolutely
crazy.
Absolutely.
Can I slightly change the subject? There was a couple of texts earlier on, and they were about Haaland and the goal that he scored last night, and they're saying that his feet were in dangerous positions. That they're only dangerous if people's heads are near, and they weren't. They weren't near, and so he was free to do exactly what he did.
It was breathtaking goal, Malcolm.
Sorry, John.
Breathtaking goal, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Yeah.
And it was brilliantly athletic, almost gymnastic in the way that he went about it, and well done him. But there weren't any heads anywhere near, and so therefore he's perfectly okay to do it. I
mean, if we start ruling out goals like that, like the Isaac one at Liverpool, we may as well close down football, because surely the whole reason for taking part is to see wonderful goals. And if we're going to chalk off every wonderful goal, the whole thing becomes a bit pointless.
Well,
and you're right. There was no foot there.
Sure.
There was no head there.
Absolutely. It's only dangerous when there are heads near, and you're putting them in danger.
And by the way, can we just say in passing before we move on from Haaland, and I'm not trying to compare him to Newcastle's recent signing, because that would be far too unfair on Isaac, who's just beginning his big time career, etc. But 54 million, if that can be a snip, it's a snip, mind, isn't it? The goals he's scoring, and he's only cost 54 million, which is less than Newcastle have just paid and less than other players have just paid. And I'm not trying to heap pressure onto Isaac, because I'm thrilled the boys here, and I'm desperate for him to do well against Bournemouth on Saturday, as he did at Liverpool. But stand alone, Haaland at 54 million. If 54 million can ever be described as a snip, that's a snip. Considering that Jack Grealish cost twice as much, 100 million. 100 million by the same club. What's that make Haaland?
Yeah. And Grealish is getting splinters in his bum from sitting on the bench.
Absolutely. No, this guy is a machine.
Yeah, yes, and they bought him to win the Champions League. There's no doubt about it. Nothing will change my mind on that. They really want to win the Champions League.
Yeah, because
they do, because they've cocked up so many times.
Yeah, and they've won the Premier League 4 times out the last 5. They don't need him to win the Premier League, but they do need him to win the Champions League, as Steve was saying. And he is awesome. I mean, he is awesome. A throwback to the old type of centre forward we loved so much.
I don't know. That's a good question. Who would everybody twin him with from past players? Sorry,
he's got a bit of Shearer. He's got a bit of Shearer about him, like I think.
Yes.
But he's physically a lot bigger. He looks. I mean, obviously, I've not met him in the flesh, but he just looks like a hell of a unit in the game that we watched him play at Newcastle.
And he is. I can see where you're saying about Shearer and his relentless ability to finish, but he's twice as quick as Alan was.
Yeah,
Alan wasn't quick. I mean, my favorite, and this isn't meant in any way other than a compliment, but the first, when Malcolm said, which is very interesting, who can you twin him with? The first thing it leapt to my mind was the Incredible Hulk. Because of the build, he's got muscles on muscles, hasn't he?
Yes, I understand that, but I haven't seen Haaland turn green yet.
Well, I'm green with envy when I look at him scoring some of those goals, because we could do with them at Newcastle. But he's quite phenomenal and he's quite different class. And the interesting thing, and we're all just musing, and this program could go on forever if we keep doing this. The interesting thing, I'm going to turn a question the other way on to you two. The interesting thing was before Manchester City got Haaland, and they were desperately looking for a centre forward, having lost Aguero and then not had an orthodox number 9, looking for a centre forward to go on and win Europe and that. The one they wanted, and the one that wanted to go to them, was Harry Kane. And Spurs stopped it, and then Conte come in and Kane's happier, etc., etc. So the question I'm going to ask you two is, did City get the best of the deal getting Haaland and not getting Kane, or would Kane be better than Haaland? There's a question for you as a goal-scoring centre forward.
Straight away, I'd say they did better by getting Haaland.
100%, I agree. I mean, Harry Kane is, coming towards, the twilight of his career in many ways. I would say Haaland's right at the start of it, isn't it? Isn't he?
Yes, absolutely. That's. I mean, yes. The thing to look at is, if you forget ages, which ones are better at the moment. But yes, to buy, you're going to get so much more out of Haaland. And bear in mind that I know Spurs were trying to put City off, but that's for something like 150,000 for Kane. Now, if
150 million, John.
150 million, yes.
Yeah.
No, I would have took him at that price. 150 million. But if you think Grealish was 100 million, he's 1.5 times Grealish. But 150 million for Kane, 54 million for Haaland, who's
a third of it
in his 20s. Phenomenal deal.
Couple of names getting chucked in. John says he's a bit like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and Didier Drogba is another one that Davy Bruce has chucked in. Drogba was very quick and very physical, wasn't he? Finishing of Shearer, speed of Supermac, physics of Zlatan, says Steve. He's put a lot of thought into that message. Haaland would inevitably pick up injuries playing like he does. And it's easy to play in a team that creates chances as well as Manchester City does as well, I guess. Mal, I mean, you've still got to be there and finish it. But
to be truthful, it reminds me a little bit of Joselu, but I mean, it could be...
Brilliant.
Could be because it's an early morning recording and I haven't woken up yet.
Yeah, maybe. Darren says, from reports in the last hour, we are planning to sign Tielemans in January for 17 million. Arsenal are hoping to sign him on a free next summer. Lots of transfer talk parked because the window is shut, but now journalists certainly looking ahead to the next window opening in January. And with there being no Premier League and only World Cup to talk about, it'll increase as we get towards Christmas.
Absolutely.
June 2020 says, what do you guys think of Dubravka saying that he's now at a massive club that wins big trophies? It's a huge mistake he's made. We will win the Premier League before Man United. And has he forgot he's only on loan? It's the kind of thing you say when you go to a new club, though, Mal, isn't it?
Yes, of course it is. Although of late, Man United haven't offered very much at all. But at the same time, what Dubravka has done is just swapped his situation at Newcastle to an identical situation at Man United. He's on the bench. and he's going to be very limited as to play time. So if I'd been him, I would have said, if I'm going to go, I want to go to somewhere where I am going to be first choice. I am going to play, because at his age, that's what he needs. He needs to get as many games as possible into his season.
Yeah. Gibbo, I mean, it's kind of thing that, you know, we don't know what context that was in and from what interview, but yeah, it's a kind of thing where you say when you go into a new club to try and endear yourself to the supporters, isn't it?
Yeah, well, unless you're Jeff Hendrick and you're going to QPR, of course, but I mean that's different. That's a different thing. Well, all he's talking about when he says it with Manchester United, he's talking about the history and the reputation, isn't he? Not the current side. I mean, you know, it's got this history, but that was Ferguson. It's got the history and the reputation, the biggest club in the world. You know, every label. You know, we are the richest club in the world. They're the biggest club in the world. Well, are they? And are we? Etc. Etc. But yeah, he's talking history. He's not talking about the current side, because since Ferguson left, they've never seriously looked like winning the league whatsoever. And the only thing I can think of, and because Malcolm had a terrific point where you're just swapping one bench for another bench. The only reason you can say, well, why do that is A, if your wages are almost doubled, and Manchester United will certainly have heaped some sugar on top of what he was getting at Newcastle, because they just treat money that way. And secondly, if they happen to win something, and it sure isn't going to be the Premier League, but if it happened to be the Europa League or one of the domestic cups, then as a cover keeper, you get a gong. So do you think they'll win something before we win something? Probably not. But you know, he's been turned by it being Manchester United, hasn't he?
Yes, he has.
Without thinking about it.
Also, John, I'm not so sure that he can earn any more than he was earning at Newcastle, because I
tell you what, I was dead interested in why he can't, and now I'm not going to find out, because he's obviously telling us amid terrific silence.
He's back.
Oh,
he's back.
You're back.
Oh, was it me that disappeared? Sorry,
it was
about
you
that.
who disappeared, but you're back in the room.
All right. My point I wanted to make was that when you go on loan, you stick with the contract of the club you've just left, and Man United will pick up probably 100% of that. You can do a deal where a club taking you on loan pays 50%, and the other club pay 50% as well. You know, whatever. There's all sorts of negotiations to be had, but I don't think Dubravka can be paid more other than maybe bonuses. He can take on the Man United bonuses, perhaps. Yeah. But as his contract stands, that is his pay for now.
I think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Malcolm. And we forget, to a certain extent, like we did, that he's on loan. And therefore he's still a Newcastle United player. Because we being fans, honestly think we've seen the last of Dubravka. We don't think he's going to come back next season and play in our first team or whatever. What I think might have happened, Malcolm, is there's talk of there's already a deal done for him to go permanently there. And if he plays X number of games in the first team at Manchester United this season, they have got to take him full. They've got to sign him for next season. So to put that in place, they will have had to negotiate a contract with him for next season.
Yeah.
If it all happens, if he's not a disaster and you send him back, and presumably that would include a price, a bigger wage than he's on now at Newcastle for next season. But that's only if they take him. But that deal is done. And if he plays X number of games, goodness knows, it could be as little as 10, or it could be a lot more. And if it's 10 over all competitions, like the Premier League, the League Cup, the FA Cup, and the Europa League, surely you might manage 10. Then the deal must be done permanently, and he'll then get that particular wage.
Be
There'll
interesting.
be incentives for them, but they're not huge to go there. And I think only an outsider, and remember, he's not from this country, he's from Slovenia, and Manchester United on his CV when he retires, it'll look good. But only people like that would think the Manchester United gig is better than this gig, because I believe Newcastle are unerringly going one way, and that's upwards. And it's very debatable where Manchester United are going. Very debatable.
No surprises in the squad, Malcolm, really, was there? I mean, Gillespie is out. Karius, the new goalkeeper from... we brought him in after Darlow got injured, is in. Emil Kraft, sadly, we saw that horrific injury that he sustained in the Tranmere Cup tie. More or less, rules him out for the rest of the season. But I guess, probably before the Kraft injury, we were all saying, well, should John Joe Shelby be in the squad? But I think they've got it right. There wasn't many other things they could do, and I think the only shot was maybe Gillespie out. And that's it really. So it's as you were, and it's a good 25-man squad.
Okay, yeah, all right. But I do see a clash of styles of a way of playing between Bruno and Shelby. I don't think they can play together, and players are more reactive to the way Bruno plays than they are to the way Shelby plays. Shelby, I've always felt he plays very much to his own strengths, and to hell with everybody else. And
I think
so if they had let him go once they had signed Bruno, I don't think it would have been a great loss to Newcastle.
I think for the squad itself, Steve, it's so obvious it's untrue. Gillespie is not, sadly, Premier League class, which is why they went and got the Liverpool guy. He may have had the disaster European Cup, but he played lots of games for Liverpool before that, had a great reputation at one time. But once you've had a bad one,
it was just one game, wasn't it?
Yeah, so much in the spotlight, you're bound to. But they obviously rate him. Gillespie's contract's coming to an end. He was always bought to be the number 3 keeper or the number 4 keeper. And Newcastle feel this lad that's come in, the ex-Liverpool guy, who's only 29. So in goalkeeping terms, that's not an old goalkeeper. That's coming up to your prime.
That's right.
I think Gillespie was always going to be the back burner, the last in the queue. And so him being left out once they got this other guy in was bound to happen. There had to be the need for a couple others to go out. Kraft's the obvious answer to that because he can't play. Remember, this squad in January can be revisited and you can come up with a completely new squad after that window's open. And Kraft would probably go back into the 25-man squad then. But he's the one to leave out now without a shadow of doubt. And you also got to remember that when you look at that squad, it's not totally exclusive. For example, Elliot Anderson isn't in it because he doesn't need to be in it, because he qualifies as one of the under-21 players.
That's right.
That are additional to your 25-man squad. He's still only 19, for goodness sake. So he hasn't to be named in the 25-man squad. That's part of the beauty of it, because you really got a 26-man squad, haven't you? Because Elliot Anderson is very much part of the squad, but doesn't have to be one of those numbers. So he is there as well. So not having to put him in the 25 names, Kraft and Gillespie out, people like Fernandez, the decisions would have had to be made with, already went off almost on transfer deadline day to Spain. So those decisions were made for Eddie. So yes, there's absolutely no surprises whatsoever.
No, definitely not. Okay, Newcastle United are playing this weekend, back in action, as are everybody. 3 o'clock kickoff, St James's Park this coming Saturday. Bournemouth have taken up their full allocation of 1,155 tickets, so the place will be rocking. Don't forget, there will be a minute's silence The players and match officials will wear black armbands, and we will all be singing the national anthem, God Save the King. And when the clock turns to 70 minutes, fans will be invited to applaud the Queen's 70th year reign. So a big day. As I mentioned, pre-match entertainment at the Dog and Parrot with me and Malcolm, or at Pumphrey's with John Anderson and John Gibson. Team news, well, little early for that, but John Joe Shelby, Carl Darlow and Emil Kraft all out. As I did mention a little bit earlier, ASM, Bruno and Wilson are all training today. So whether that means that they'll be fit for selection on Saturday, we'll find out a little bit more off Eddie Howe tomorrow. Referee is Craig Pawson. This is the first time he has refereed one of our games since the 2-1 win at Burnley in May. And VAR, which is causing controversy and often switched off, is Stuart Atwell. So, Malcolm, where do you see this one going?
Well, it's about time Newcastle won a game. Having won the first game of the season, they've spluttered in the penalty area, and so would dearly like to see Newcastle go out and give Bournemouth a bit of a tanking, and others have done that so far in this early part of the season, and I really would like to see Newcastle flowing through the pitch and into the penalty area, getting bodies in there, and I'd like to see a few goals being knocked in. I really would, and no better side to do it against than Bournemouth.
PDK says it's a must-win. John, would you agree?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, there's no question Newcastle are moving in the right direction. There's no question that overall at the beginning of the season there's been a great improvement in their style of play and the way they've played. But the bottom line remains that we've only won one Premier League game out of 6. We missed a big opportunity last time out at home to Crystal Palace to make that look a lot better. Yes, I'm angry at VAR in that game because we should have won 1-0 with that goal standing. But at the same time, I'm angry with Newcastle United because they ought to have won that game with or without the VAR goal. They over the hour and a half, they had plenty of opportunities, and it was our failure to score that meant we didn't win it. We've only won 1 out of 6. And you know, the amazing thing is that we think of Bournemouth before the season started, guys. Most people in the country were saying Bournemouth are one of the favourites for relegation. You know, there's a club comes up and goes straight back down. Fulham have done it in the past. Other clubs have done it in the past. Bournemouth. And we're saying Bournemouth look as if they'll go back down. We then look and see that they got beat 3 by Arsenal, they got beat 4 by Man City, and they got beat 9 by Liverpool. Yet they've won twice as many Premier League games as Newcastle. They've won 2 Premier League games, and we've won 1 Premier League game. Now, isn't that amazing? That is absolutely amazing. We've both beaten Nottingham Forest, mind, so are they the ones that's going to go down? But that is interesting. We've got to put that right. And ironically, when they got done 9 at Liverpool, they sacked the manager, Scott Parker, our old mucker from up here that played for Newcastle, not just because of the 9, but because he was at loggerheads with the owner. And when you think of a manager at loggerheads with the owner, there's only going to be one winner, and it's the owner because he owns the club. So they sack him, they put a caretaker in, and they get a 0-0 with Wolves and beat Forest 3-2 with the caretaker in. So there has been a reaction to it. My honest opinion is that Newcastle will not only have got to win, but will win. And I'm taking Newcastle will win 3-0, and Isaac will be on the score sheet.
Okay. Yeah. Newcastle will win, and they need to win well.
Prediction, Mal?
Well, I really would like to see Newcastle going all out to build a bit of a scoreline. John says 3-0. I'm going to go 4-0.
I'm going nap. I'm going 5-0, lads.
Can we say to Eddie Howe and Amanda, there's no pressure from NUFC Matters on you whatsoever this weekend, but anything beneath 3-0, and you've got to answer us three guys.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely.
Absolutely fantastic, lads. Great hour. Please, guys, subscribe to the channel, but also make a donation to John Tudor. I've seen there's a couple of £100 got in since we broadcast this morning. So Brilliant. Worth giving it a mention. We will keep pushing it as well on tomorrow night's show. So please, if you can, make a donation to the John Tudor Fund GoFundMe. Please do. As always, lads, absolute pleasure. Have a great weekend. See you next week.
Take care, guys.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye-bye now.